All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. So, thank you all for coming. This is a great turnout. So, my name is Garrett, and I'm going to be talking about the sacred power of plants and also the healing power of plants. So, in order to truly understand the sacred power of plants, we must first look towards nature and ask ourselves, how does growth, evolution, and true transformation occur within nature? And while there are many examples, one of the most fascinating and mind-blowing examples is the transformation of a caterpillar into a butterfly. And so the way that works is the caterpillar essentially sheds its skin, creating a chrysalis, which I just learned from ChatGPT. It's not a cocoon, believe it or not. That is for moths, apparently. So the caterpillar sheds its skin, it creates a chrysalis. Inside that chrysalis, its whole body completely dissolves into a chemical soup. This chemical soup is then restructured and reorganized into the components necessary for a butterfly. And then, several days later, a butterfly emerges from the cocoon, right? This is an extremely wild process. And what I'm realizing is that this is a perfect example of an alchemical process occurring in nature. And so, and from an alchemical standpoint, the caterpillar, if you're familiar with alchemy, the caterpillar represents lead. It represents raw potential. And the butterfly represents gold, and it represents the manifestation and actualization of a higher state of being. And so what nature teaches us about this event is that in order for the caterpillar to transform into a butterfly, it must go through a death and rebirth process. And it must shed and burn away anything that is not in alignment with becoming a butterfly. And what I've found, and you probably all know this is the same thing is true for us. See, we are all born as big piles of lead, right? Big piles of potential. And within that potential exist higher states and higher possibilities of who you could become, all the way up to the best version of yourself. But one thing that's different between us and caterpillars is that there is no guarantee that we will achieve our highest potential, right? There's no guarantee that we will become anything more than that pile of lead. So if we do want to become better, if we do want to step into that golden version of ourselves, we have to embark on our own alchemical journey. We have to embark on our own death and rebirth process and remove anything that is not in alignment with who we could be. And so this is how the sacred power of plants work, is they help guide us through our own alchemical journey and our own death and rebirth. And I know this from experience. So the 1 month after going down to the jungle in Peru and doing my first sama or dieta, my whole life collapsed. I lost everything. I lost my businesses, I lost my marriage, I lost my finances, and I had to file for bankruptcy. My whole world came burning to the ground. And while that was extremely tough to deal with, I realized that that was necessary, that I went through a death and rebirth, because even though my life was fairly good, I was out of alignment with who I was supposed to become. And so the whole reason I'm here speaking to you now is because the sacred power of the plants helped kickstart this journey for me. So a little bit about myself. I've been fascinated with human potential and trying to become the best version of myself and helping other people do the same. I spent many years working in the fitness industry, and most importantly, I've spent 9 years working with ayahuasca in the Shipibo tradition. I've sat in over 300 ceremonies, which is absolutely ridiculous and a lot, and I don't recommend anyone do it, but it's just kind of the way, this is kind of the way my journey ended up being. And I've done 5 samas or dietas, including a 1-year sama. And I'm not going to get too much into what that is because that could be a whole talk into itself, but just know that that is a way in the Shipibo style to further your relationship with plant spirits, and it's the way you receive your training, or it's also a process for deep healing. So why do I do this work? Well, the reason, because like I said, I was fascinated with human potential, and I found that ayahuasca, particularly in the Shipibo tradition, is one of the most powerful tools I've ever seen for personal development and helping you step into that better version of yourself. And another thing is it helps you connect or reconnect with the natural world, with the spirit world, and even your higher self. And finally, it was a missing component in my own journey, and because it was missing for me, I assumed that it could be missing for some of you. And by that, part of that I mean is plant medicine, but also that is a energetic or spiritual work, because we kind of live and operate on 3 planes of consciousness: the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. And I realized that up until about 9 years ago, I had 0 spiritual or energetic work. So I'll be talking about ayahuasca in the Shipibo tradition. I'll be talking also about a fascinating concept called spiritual herbalism. And then we'll get into a little bit about how the death and rebirth process works. So is there anyone here who's never heard of ayahuasca before? Oh, wow. So I almost always have at least one person. It always surprises me. I'm like, really? Wow.
I've heard the word.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. So ayahuasca it's many things, but on its most basic level, it's a tea. It's a psychedelic tea made with 2 plants. On another level, it's a tool, and I kind of talked about that. It's a tool for helping you with personal development and healing and whatnot. And then on an even higher level, it's an entity. It's known as the grandmother, or La Madre, or what I like to think of it is the spirit of Mother Nature herself. And that's where ayahuasca really starts to get fascinating. So it's made with 2 plants, like I said. So the first plant is chacruna. And chacruna contains DMT, which is dimethyltryptamine. And DMT is known as the spirit molecule. But one of the fascinating things about this is fascinating, but so DMT is not orally active, meaning you could make a tea from these leaves, you could eat these leaves, you could blend them up in a smoothie, drink them down, and nothing would happen. And the reason nothing would happen is because we have an enzyme in our gut called MAO, monoamine oxidase, which essentially destroys the DMT and prevents it from crossing the blood-brain barrier. So how do you make this become orally active? Well, this is where the second component of the tea comes in. You have the Banisterius caapi vine, and this is where it starts to get really interesting, because the vine contains an MAOI, which is monoamine oxidase inhibitor. So the vine contains this thing that suppresses the enzyme in our gut, which then allows the DMT to become orally active. Which now is fascinating, because if you're a curious person, you might be like, how did they figure that out? Like, how does that work? This is not a coincidence that these 2 plants have been combined to make something very powerful, especially when we know that ayahuasca is thousands of years old. I believe the oldest, what we consider record of it, is 1,000 years, and that's because they found some bag with some ayahuasca residue on it. But I believe it's been in use for tens of thousands of years, who knows. And so what does the mainstream narrative tell us about thousands of years ago? Well, there's no science, there's no microscopes, there's no chat GPT, right? Very primitive thousands of years ago. And so the mainstream will say, well, they just trial and error, right? They were just in the jungle and they were bored, and so they were just combining things. But that is ridiculous, because there are somewhere between 40 and 80,000 different plant species in the jungle. Many of them are poisonous. Not to mention, you would have to know what you were looking for, right? You would have to know DMT existed. You would have to know that there's an enzyme in your gut and all that kind of stuff. And so, how did they do this? Well, if you ask the Shipibo, for example, they will say the plants told them. And more specifically, they will say tobacco told them. And see, tobacco was a very powerful master plant. But that actually can lead to more questions and answers. But what this really comes down to is that there's this idea of intelligence in nature, that nature is alive and nature has a spirit to it, and this spirit is talking to us all the time, and the lakes and the rivers and the rocks and the mountains and the trees, but we can no longer hear them because we are so distracted by social media and our jobs and all the things, and so we've lost that connection. But this idea of intelligence in nature is essentially a big foundation for Shipibo style medicine. So, have people heard of the Shipibo before? Okay, cool. So they're a tribe in the jungles of Peru. They're about 35 to 40,000 strong, and so there are many tribes that work with ayahuasca. Now, obviously, I'm biased because I've worked and trained with the Shipibo, but it seems to be the word on the street is they're highly respected. And one of the reasons it is if you look at their traditional clothing, it's kind of hard to see here, but these are all patterns. And what these are energetic patterns of different plants. And so their whole, and different plants that they use energetically in ceremonies. So their whole like culture is just steeped in ayahuasca. And in fact, obviously this is what they believe, but that ayahuasca's preferred language is Shipibo. So some of the Shipibo ceremonial and medicinal practices. So when it comes to a Shipibo style ceremony, the main thing to know about this is that the purpose is for healing and growth, right? Like, it's not about the psychedelic experience. Now, there's a good chance you will have that, and there's a good chance that can be beneficial, but that's not the goal. The goal is for you to leave a better person than you arrived, to be healthier, to be lighter, to be stronger, to be more grounded and more motivated to then continue on with your journey. So that is the goal of the ceremony. It's not to surf the cosmos. And one of the things that they believe is that illness is a result of essentially energetic disharmony, which actually kind of checks out if we think about it from a scientific standpoint, because we know that everything has an energetic signature to it. So basically, the Shipibo, in a very simplified term, could be thought of as like energetic or spiritual doctors. And the big thing that they are doing in the ceremony is they are managing energies. They are managing energies in the room, and they are managing energies within people, and helping remove things that do not need to be there, bring things in that should be there, and protecting and all those aspects. So very fascinating. And the main tool they use to manage the energy are their songs, their medicine songs. And you might have heard the term Icaros. The Shipibo term is Bewa. And one of the most fascinating things that Shipibo do that I'm unaware of anybody else does, obviously I don't know, and I'm talking all medicine cultures here, but I don't know all medicine cultures, so I could be wrong about this, but 95% of the songs they sing are freestyle, made up on the spot. And the reason, and so most traditions will sing your medicine songs, which are awesome. and powerful and effective and beautiful, but you're limited when you're singing one song, when you're kind of like, this is track 7 off my new album, right? And the freestyle is necessary because think about energies, right? They are, well, one, we know that energy is neither created nor destroyed. They just transform from one form to another. And then you think of energies, they flow, right? They move. And so the reason the Shipibo, they developed this style of freestyling, because when they are working on someone, maybe someone has a broken heart or whatever, and you're working on them with that broken heart, but then maybe something else pops up. Well, if I was limited in my song, then I'd have to finish up my broken heart song and then switch over to the next track. But then they can just boom, 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 and immediately pop over, address that other energy, come right back to the broken heart. Maybe they address something in the room and then come right back to that person. So you realize that this is the only way it should be done. So very cool, very unique. And then another aspect is that they work with other plants in ceremony, and it's not just about ayahuasca. So that's where the term spiritual herbalism comes from. And to understand this term, you have to first, I don't know if anyone's ever heard as above, so below. I'm also a big fan of the Hermetic principles. So what as above, so below means is that, I talked about it earlier, that there's a physical realm, a mental realm, and a spiritual realm. Well, this phrase means that the same rules apply on all realms of existence. So if you think about herbalism in a physical sense, right? If you make an appointment with an herbalist and you sit down with them and they're going to ask you what's going on, what's wrong with you, why are you here, and based on the symptoms or whatever you tell them, they're going to say, okay, this plant, you should take 4 drops of this plant, make a tea with this plant, and whatever. Well, as above, so below, what the Shipibo have discovered is that these plants, most medicinal plants, also have a spirit associated with them. And so just like some physical herbalist may prescribe lavender for you to help calm you in the physical world, well, you can use lavender energetically, the signature of lavender, to help clean and center and calm people down. So very fascinating concept. And so kind of the way this works is, I like to think of ayahuasca is the star and the container of the show. But behind the scenes, you have all these other plants, and they're help doing the heavy lifting. They're helping with removing negative energies. They're bringing in love and light, and they're centering, they're calming, they're also protecting. So these plants can have very protective qualities, and so the way a practitioner develops a relationship with these other plant energies is through a process called sama or dieta, which I kind of talked about earlier. And like I said, I'm not going to go too much into that, but those plants, this is a huge part of the Shipibo style, is that these plants are there to help manage and guide, and big time helpers. And those people that have done it many times can start to pick up on these other plant spirits. And so here's some that I have a personal relationship with, and the pictures are kind of hard to see, but they were just kind of fun things I threw in ChatGPT. But the point of that is these spirits of the plants, and what's cool about these plants is, just like each one of us is all unique, we are all unique individuals. Well, the spirits of plants are unique individuals. So some of them, for example, Morosa, which is one of my main plants, is this very feminine, heartwarming plant. She's very good to bring in love. She's good for like a broken heart, and she's kind of like this warm hug, warm, motherly, feminine spirit. Where lavender is another one I have, which is very similar to Morosa, but here's the big difference is I would say morosa's warm, and I would say lavender is cold, and not in a bad sense, but like lavender is so like morosa. If you're feeling really, you need a warm hug, I use morosa on you. If you're just completely like you need to be calmed down and be cooled off, well then that's when lavender would be called in. And then tobacco, it's kind of considered one of the grandfather. Ayahuasca is the mother, tobacco is the grandfather, and tobacco can be, it's kind of considered like the Swiss Army knife and can be used for protecting, cleaning, centering, and all these things. And another one I have, and these are not all my plants, but so I did a year-long sama with this tree called Ayauma, and Ayauma is a awesome plant. It's very strong, very masculine, very warrior spirit, very grounding, and it can kind of do everything. And so this is the basis of my medicine is this tree called Ayauma. So what is an ayahuasca ceremony good for, and what are these plants good for? What can they heal? Well, the simplest way to say is they can heal anything preventing you from achieving a higher state of being, right? But they're also good for traumas. That's a very generalized term, but you know, traumas could be abuse, mental, physical, or emotional. Diseases, particularly autoimmune diseases, and I like when you kind of break down that word, because a disease really is disease, and all diseases kind of stem from a out of whackness or lacking of harmony, but particularly autoimmune diseases, because if you know about those and understand what those are our bodies are so dysregulated and out of harmony that the body doesn't know what to do when it's attacking itself. So these plants are really good at helping bring you back into energetic harmony. Also good for mental disorders, addictions, and then the catch-all would be energetic blockages, right? And that's just thinking of the perfect version of yourself would be pure light. I don't know if we ever get there, but what is blocking that light is dark energies. So that's kind of what they do, but how do they work and how do they heal? So you've kind of got two different things going on here. You've got what I call the mysterious and the mystical, and then you've got the science aspect of it. So from the mysterious, well, that first level is plant intelligence, kind of like what I was talking about. And any of you that have sat with the medicine know that there is just an intelligence behind this that you can try to explain, but only people who have sat with it can truly understand what you were trying to tell them. And it's like these plants just know, right? One of the jokes of these types of ceremonies is you don't get what you need, or you don't get what you want, you get what you need. And that's a lot of times where that intelligence comes in. You may come in with one intention, and then a whole thing happens to you, and then you're like, what is that about? And then 6 months later, you're like, oh, I get it. That is smart. So then there's just like the energetic aspect, like I was talking about, where it's really about harmonizing energies. But then there's a cool part where we know that science actually has done some research and can back some of this up. So one thing, and this is not just unique to ayahuasca, this goes to a lot of different plant medicines, but what they do and what they're good for is they help you shut down your default mode network. So your default mode network is exactly what it sounds like. It's your operating system, right? And this is why, like, when it comes to, let's just say, healing or growing, we all know what we should be doing, right? A lot of times it's not a secret that we should probably be working out and eating healthy and starting that business that we've been putting off and all the things. And so it's like, why are we not doing it? We all know what to do. Well, it's because our default mode network, if anyone is a fan of Joe Dispenza, he says neurons that fire together wire together, right? Well, we've essentially created our operating system, and it's like, even though you know you need to do this, it's hard to break out of those patterns because those neurons have just fired and wired together so tightly that you're almost stuck. And so why plant medicines can be so powerful is they temporarily shut this down. This doesn't mean you completely lose who you are, but it gives you like an even playing field. And I like to think of it as almost like a defragging of the hard drive. It kind of reorganizes everything, puts you on an even playing field, and then your brain goes into a state of neuroplasticity. And this can last for days to even months afterwards. And there are other ways, even things like exercise and doing new things can keep that neuroplasticity going. So long story short, your default mode network gets shut down, and then your brain goes into this state of neuroplasticity, which allows you now to form new patterns and new habits. It's like you get a complete reset. And then, so this is, I'm going to get into this here in a second, because what you do after ceremony matters more than what you do in ceremony oftentimes, because of this state of neuroplasticity. The ceremony gets you there. Now what are we going to do? Because you've got this brain that's ready to be reprogrammed, and if you just go right back into your old patterns, what do you think is going to happen? And I was at the psychedelic conference in Denver back in June, and I was at a talk when they were talking about integration, and one of the things they said, which made sense, I never thought of before, is that if you go back into your old patterns after this, they can even rewire even stronger. So something you need to be aware of, because you can, and then the big things that they do is with this defragging is it helps you enhance your intuition, right? We have two minds going on, and this is the masculine and the feminine, and we've got our logical mind and we've got our intuition, our heart mind, and most people in our society are out of balance. We're way too in our logical, and we've lost touch with our intuition. But the intuition is where all the magic happens. So it helps boost up your intuition and your connection to your higher self, and which is essentially giving you your power back. So this leads me into integration. So the famous saying is, ayahuasca only works if you are willing to do the work. It is extremely powerful, but like I said, if you don't do anything, you maybe have a fun story to tell people and this profound thing, but you're not going to benefit from it. So, and I have a whole integration process that I'm putting together and working with people, because this is very important. But it can be as simple as doing the things you need to do, and as simple as, one of the fascinating things with ayahuasca that I've seen over the 10 years of working with it is how oftentimes people just automatically want to start doing better. Like they're like, I don't feel like drinking anymore. I just don't want to drink, or I really want to start eating healthy, or I want to start exercising, because it starts showing you who you could be. And usually that best version of yourself is this healthier version of yourself. And then also the integration helps with like what I call growing and not just healing, because this is very important on our journey of stepping into our potential. We've got two things going on. First, we need to heal, right? And there's a lot of things that we need to heal from, but the healing will only take you so far. After you've healed, now we need to grow, right? We need to start stepping in and pushing ourselves and challenging ourselves. I think of it as like if you break your arm. Well, the healing aspect is we put a cast on that arm. And this is actually a good example of how these ceremonies can work. So that the bone grows back together, we remove the cast. You have a moment of, yes, I'm healed, and you experience this big high. But then what happens is, as the days and weeks go on, your arm starts to hurt. And the reason it starts to hurt is because those muscles atrophied while they were actually in the cast. And your arm hurts and it starts throbbing, and your arm is weaker than it was before. And so then you start freaking out, and you're like, something's wrong. My arm's not healed. Put the cast back on. Something's wrong. It's like, no. Your arm is healed, but now we have to do the work. Now we have to start exercising to rebuild the muscle and strengthen the tendons and stuff like that. And so that's the idea of growth, is now it's the work after we've quote unquote healed. So oftentimes you may have healed, but you think you haven't, when really it's taking on that next step. And this is all leading us to become better versions. So who would this kind of work be good for? Well, anyone who feels lost or stuck. And let me say, first of all, this is not for everybody. Maybe you resonate with this, maybe you don't. Maybe you resonate with me, maybe you don't. But I do believe that energetic work should be a part of your journey. But if you're feeling lost or stuck, this can be very good for you. Anyone dealing with certain traumas or diseases, anyone who feels that they are nowhere near their potential. And then, but here's the big one, anyone willing to do the work. And I like to say, what we do in a Shipibo style ceremony, well, I'll tell you what we don't do. We don't sit around singing Kumbaya, right? It's hard work. It's beautiful work, right? Anything that is worth anything in value is always requires work, right? You're not given healing, you earn the healing, but it can be one of the most beautiful and most profound experiences of your life. But and there's nothing wrong with singing Kumbaya, there's nothing wrong, but this ain't it. So if you're looking for that, don't look at, look somewhere else. But so maybe you're like, okay, this sounds cool and I want to do this. Well, how can you show up to a ceremony, and how can you be a good passenger? Well, intention matters, and this is bigger than plant medicine. But any plant medicine you should always have an intention. But I'm also realizing we should be intentional about everything we do, right? Why are you doing anything that you're doing? And I find that most people have problems because they just start going through the motions, and they don't even know why are you doing that? I don't know, right? You don't even know why you're doing whatever it is you're doing. So intention matters, and that helps bring you back to presence. Research the practitioner. So I've been involved in this space for a long time, and I can tell you, most people pouring and serving medicine have no business doing this. And it's because they haven't gone through their own proper training, their own proper death and rebirth situation and all that kind of stuff. So I like to think of it as fire, right? Fire can provide light, it can keep you warm, it can provide protection, it can cook your food, but it can also burn your house down or burn an entire city down. And so these plants can be like working with fire. So hopefully the person you're working with has done something other than just think that they've been called to do this, right? In order to work with this medicine, you should have gone through your own trial by fire. Do the work. So to do a Shipibo style ceremony, there's a preparatory diet required, and about a week before, then there's the whole thing of showing up to the ceremony, doing the work in the ceremony, and then continuing on, right? So that's how you're going to get the most out of this, is doing the work. And which kind of leads to ceremony is just one part of our journey, right? Our journey to become the best version of ourselves. It's a very powerful part and a big part, but it's only one part of your journey. So key takeaways from this is that ayahuasca is one of the best tools I've ever found to help you step into your potential and help, burn away anything that is preventing you from being in alignment with your higher self. Who and where you drink with matters. I cannot stress that enough. And I would say this should go with any plant medicines, right? Please do your research. Just because someone serves medicine and drinks medicine does not mean they're good or it's the right environment for you. The Shipibo methodology is amazing and fascinating, and they have this whole world of plant spirits. And I mean, I've done this so much, and every weekend I do, my mind is blown by how intelligent this is. It's hard work, like I said. Anything worth doing, but anything worth doing is going to be hard, right? If something was given to you, you would not respect it. And like I said, it's not a miracle cure. We talk about ayahuasca is good for healing, and it is, but it's not going, like I said, it's not going to just cure you. It's going to help you cure and heal yourself. I actually went through this pretty good. So I've got about 10 minutes for questions, but I'll also be downstairs. So any questions or, yeah.
So what do you think of using like mapacho during the ceremony to ground you?
Yes. So mapacho, if you don't know, mapacho is a version of tobacco. It's a jungle tobacco, Nicotina rustica, I believe. Yeah, Nicotina rustica. It's much stronger, higher nicotine content, but this is what is used in the jungle. And I use mapacho, but yes, it's a very good tool. The Shipibo use it a lot, and then passengers who are a little more advanced will use mapacho. But the way you do it is just like I was talking about, with intention. So the reason tobacco is a very powerful medicinal plant is because it's very programmable. And what you do is you speak your intention into it, and then as you're blowing that smoke on yourself, that's the prayer, and the smoke is the manifestation of that prayer. So yeah, very, very good tool. Yes?
Is there always kind of that combination of temperatures of plants, like you were talking about, kind of the warmth and the cold?
Mm-hmm.
Is there always that combination used? Is it per person?
It's per person, and obviously it depends on the plants that the practitioner has a relationship with, and so there's all the there's many factors of what plants you use and when you use them. But yeah, the way I think of it is each plant you create a relationship with is like a tool on your tool belt, or your medicine chest grows a little bit more, and so then you have more tools to work with. Although, with that being said, I have found that, it's a long story, so I won't get into it, but my journey with Ayuma has actually taught me that more is not always better, right? If you have a tool chest of 50 plant spirits that you barely have a relationship with, is that better than having 4 or 5 that you have rock solid relationships with? So I'm kind of more of the relationships matter. I'll go here first.
As a passenger, how would you determine that I was ready for a ceremony? You said that you have to have be prepared and do the work prior to.
Well, so the first thing is the willingness to do it. They say that the medicine, when you're ready, the medicine finds you, is kind of one of the ongoing things. So when it pops up on your radar screen, and then I always do a talk with people. There's some medicine contraindications, particularly SSRIs, that can lead to like serotonin syndrome. So there's that. But really, I mean, the big thing is your willingness to step up is a huge factor in you being ready. I found that one of the good aspects is, so most people know about ayahuasca, the reputation of it being hard, right? You're gonna you throw up and all these things, and so while that is not as bad as it sounds, but the good thing about that is that's a filter, right? And also this idea of like, we're here to heal. So by itself, ayahuasca has kind of weeded out the people who are just looking to get high on a Friday night, right? So, but yeah, a big aspect is your willingness to understand what it is and then be like, okay, I'm going to do that now. Let's see, I'm going here.
So what does the ceremony entail? 4 days of...
Yeah, so it's a good question. So my ceremonies are 3 nights. The 4th day, I just put on there, that's like checkout day, but just because I've had some people confused. But so it's 3 nights. The reason that is each ceremony, I think of it as one ceremony, by the way, and not 3 individual ceremonies. And so the 3 nights allows things to play out over time. And these energies can be it's layered, right? And so the first night, and this is very general, but the first night can be very surface layer stuff, right? If you're going to clean a big house, like a house of a hoarder, you got to be like, first day, you got to be like, all right, I got to just figure out what's going on, right? You're kind of just laying the groundwork, and then the second night is kind of like, all right, we're getting in there. And then the third night is then the downloads, and then the kind of putting you back together. So thinking is like energetic surgery. So and then also many of us have negative habits and patterns that we've been carrying for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? And this is not going to come out in one night. It's not going to come out in one weekend. But so that's why we do the, and so the ceremony lasts about 3 to 4 hours. That doesn't mean by that time you'll be sober, but so the only thing so in a Shipibo style ceremony, it's a silent ceremony other than the singing. And so they sing to clean the room, and each person gets an individual song based on their intentions. And there's really no other instruments. There's no CD soundtrack or anything like that. It's moments of, it's what I like to say, perfect amount of structure and flow. This is something I was talking about in my last ceremony, which is beautiful. It's enough structure and enough boundaries to keep us in line, so to speak, but enough openness to allow things to unfold, if that makes sense, right? So, and then, yeah.
I would love to go to one of your ceremonies. So I'm gonna get whatever information I need to get in there. What kind of tips can you give to someone who's just learning about this, as far as finding a good moderator or someone that can guide you through it?
Yeah, so one thing I'll also send people, I have a resources PDF that I'll email everyone who attended this to help. There are certain documentaries and books that can help, but I think some of the things too would just be asking questions of someone who leads these types of ceremonies. And yeah, I mean, obviously you don't know what you don't know, but you can asking them how long they've worked with the medicine, what their journey was like, what type of training. I mean, obviously there's no certificate. I don't have a certificate from the Shipibo, but you can trace my lineage down, and I've done enough things to where people can be like, okay, but, and then also some of your own intuition of do I resonate with this person? But if you start asking some very simple questions and they just start giving you weird answers, to me that would be a red flag. We got maybe time for one more.
So,
Yes. Yeah. And I do like to say that we call them singing. This is fascinating though. I mean, I would say I do have some singing. My singing is developing. That some would sound more beautiful, but it's also like a chanting, because it's not singing for anybody's entertainment. You're literally managing energies with the song, so it can sound a little bit more like chanting and stuff like that, which is just something I found is fascinating and cool, because and these songs can sound beautiful, but my mind was blown when I realized you're like, oh, there's not. I mean, yeah, there might be a little like things you do to add some beauty, but you're like, every sound there's a purpose behind why that sound is coming out, because you're directing energy. I like to think of it as Minority Report. Anyone ever seen that movie? That's kind of what it's, the big screen, and you're just like, and you're constantly like managing energies, and that's why I was talking about with the Shipibo, and this idea and this way of freestyling is so important, because you can just manage energies. But a good question. So yeah, I'll just say also, like, so in a ceremony there are moments of silence too, because I'm not going to just be singing for an entire 3 hours straight. So I'll sing a song, and then there might be some quiet time, and then I sing. Which is actually part of the ceremony, because you'll find that when I sing, the medicine gets activated. You feel it moving around. And then when it's quiet, then everything kind of settles, and that's oftentimes when like your visions might come on, your intuition might start coming in, and then everything gets settled. And I start singing, and then the process starts all over again. Well, I want to respect the time of the next speaker, so I will be downstairs at a booth, so I'm happy, and so please come down there, and I have a list. I'll get your email, I'll send you a resources guide, and I will get you on my newsletter. All right? Thank you.
Thank you.